All right, everyone. I am here with Katrina, and I've been wanting to get her on for a while now, but it hasn't really worked out. But I'm so glad she agreed to it yesterday. Her and I have lots of different conversations via private message, and she's a reflecting board for me in many different ways when I try to combine our any heroes together. She is an ENFP. She's has a PhD in ecology, correct?
That's correct.
And she is a very busy mom and a loving wife.
Aw, so sweet.
And she's a good member in the communities, our Jungian type community. She's been a part of that for a long time. Definitely tries to get people involved in reading different books, and you guys have your little readings and things like that, which I thought is cute. And but yesterday we had a little aha moment, and I've always heard, like, in the naysayers and the haters of Jungian typology, for instance, although I'm starting to agree with them more and more. But when it comes to this, you hear the label pseudoscience a lot. And when we were talking yesterday, and you were bringing up that people were saying Dario Nardi's type is incorrect, and now I found out that people think he's an INFP, but he says he's an INTJ.
Well, I hope he doesn't watch this now.
It doesn't matter if he should be able to handle
He
the truth.
might be.
If he is an INTJ, he should be able to handle the truth and comment in the comments, correct?
Mhm.
And so I'm thinking in my head, okay, so we're talking about a person who has personal experience with Linda Behrens and is
Mhm.
involved in the University of California. It involved like one of the biggest institutes of MBTI studies and of typology and things like that. And if his type is incorrect, all of this is complete hogwash. And so, like, because if we can't get the leaders type correctly, how possibly could we type other people? And granted, that's not necessarily a full argument, but it's just kind of something to think about. And I was like, wow, this is like getting out of control.
Mhm.
And so then I was having a conversation with you because you've been obviously are a scientist and been around it all your adult life, correct? And we're raised with the scientific method in line of your thoughts and things like that. And but yet you still have an interest in this, and in fact a big interest in it, and you're a regular participant in it, and you're constantly talking about it, and you're constantly reading books about it. And so I wanted to get you on because obviously as a scientist, as someone who believes obviously in the scientific method and finding truth and finding stuff that's actually measurable and objective is literally your job. And so, but then this is completely an abstract art. And there's a reason why, the abstract types are more into it than the concrete types, because it's like, if I might say my own personal interpretation of it right now, I see the patterns there. I see the connections. I can use it in my everyday life. In fact, I help with court, with other people. I've even helped with someone going through a divorce. And I said, your wife is an ISFJ. What you're doing is completely incorrect. This is what you need to do to get her on your page. And that helped and it worked. I had real life experience. And so you consider that be objective. But then when you're dealing with breaking down humanity in itself, then there's always seems to be these holes that you can poke through. And so I know I already distracted, and this is not what we're supposed to do in the beginning, and I apologize for that. However, if you can introduce yourself, and talk about your job and why you're interested in Jungian typology.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. Okay. Well, thank you for the introduction and for having me. And so yeah. So I'm Katrina, and so I do have a PhD in ecology. That's something that I got in 2013. And immediately after that, I had children because it was time to have children. I was in my 30s, and so I took off a lot of time for that. After a few years of being a stay-at-home mom, I went back to the lab and worked as a postdoc for a couple of years. And I still have some work from that I am finishing up, and still have, a manuscript and review from that. and a mentor that's on my back to keep doing work for her, even though she's not paying me. And that's just kind of how academia works sometimes, unfortunately. Yeah, and I'm an adjunct professor at a college here in Dallas. So right now the work I do is rather flexible because which I like. It kind of works with being a mom of young children, and so that's about me. So why did I get into Jungian typology? Well, I think one day I was just a little bored at work, because sometimes when you're just running analyses, you get bored because it's like this, you feel like a monkey a little bit. And so I was looking at YouTube videos and I came across C.S. Joseph, and he was sort of like the gateway into it. And then I ended up meeting just a lot of cool people that I consider my friends, and they've given me a sense of community, especially now that I do a lot of work from home. Like even before COVID, I was doing a lot of work from home. And so it makes me feel less lonely just to have, you know, people to chat with during the day. And
Yeah.
so
Similar to
I
me,
think
Jeff.
that, you know, when it comes into like, why am I into this? Even though I understand the scientific method and whatnot, I think that, you know, science is just one means of understanding the world. It's a pretty prevalent one. It's a very important one, but there's, you know, other ways, of course, of understanding the world. And there's definitely limitations to what you can explore in science. So I think your aha moment came yesterday was when, you know, I don't remember exactly how the conversation went, but I said something, well, you know, for something to be a scientific hypothesis, it needs to be falsifiable. There has to be a way to test it. And one thing that distinguishes sciences from non-sciences is that you have this openness of being disproven. And there's really some things that you can't test either way. And, you know, neither are people open to having it disproven to them. Like, you know, you were talking about your Jehovah's Witness faith and how it was just there was this dogma. They were very dogmatic about their beliefs. So so yeah, it's essential, I guess, to be able to test things and be, okay, so this is what I said. Basically, you never prove anything in science, right? That was your aha moment, because scientific hypotheses can be modified as more information comes in. So you can say, so this is the best explanation we have for this, but you never say, I prove. In fact, you know, when you're running an experiment or running a test, you have like a null hypothesis. Have you ever heard that before? No. Where, okay, so, well, this is the proper way to do science. Nobody writes their papers this way typically, because they have to make it sound more exciting than that. But you either say, so the null hypothesis says, you know, this phenomena I observed is due to random chance. It's just randomness. You know, it can't be explained. It's not any different from random chance. So the proper way is, if you run a statistics and you see a difference, an observable difference, you would either say, I reject the null hypothesis. So there's something other than random chance offering on the system, or you say, I fail to reject the null hypothesis. And so ideally you set up your experiment in a way that this can only be attributed to this one thing. And so that's why it makes it hard to study people, because you can't control people. You can't, you know, set up a controlled experiment real easily with people. So but even in the hard sciences, you never really prove things. So I guess that is the trouble I have, with people who are really dogmatic about this field, which has to be a pseudoscience. There's some subjectivity involved.
Correct. And I think most of the people who are like higher ups in in our group, for instance, I think people realize that, and most of us understand that we're 50 years, maybe more away, if we could ever have something that's more objective to it. And you mentioned doing objective research, or finding a system or a falsifiable, whatever that is. And I was talking to you about being a teacher, and what I like more about the typology nowadays is distinguish between SI and SE right away. Those are something that's more objective and more concrete, and something I can prove, and I know it's right there. And so when I have a student, for instance, and I want to test and see if they're an SE user, more or less an optimistic SE user, I can gesture a bunch and I watch their eyes. And so they're easily distracted in that sense. And so it's kind of like a little system. And so then once I figure out that my student is an ESFP, for instance, which I get a lot of, because for some reason parents want to use me for their ADD kids and running around in circles.
Special person.
And so I don't gesture anymore with them, and I find that my class is a lot better. They can pay attention to me. And because my hands like to move, and I'm definitely a natural gesture as, a movement type myself. And so there's different things like that you can use in day-to-day life. And to go along with that, that makes a lot of sense. And I was guilty of the whole dogmatic viewpoint. And like, obviously I can remember what I say and what I did. And looking back, I think that's what drew me to C.S. Joseph in the very beginning. And I still watch a lot of his content. I'm not part of the "he's not true and everything, I hate him" group. Granted, I definitely see their side of the argument too. But he offered something that was more accepting to me because, and let's be honest, he is dogmatic.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, this is the way it's going to happen. This is the way it's going to be. I'm the expert on this. Listen to me. Let me speak about it. And so to me, coming out of the Jehovah's Witness faith and finding somebody that was teaching something that was more dogmatic versus what else I saw on there, well, it could be this, or it could be this, or it could be this, or it could be this. To me, that was useless. I didn't see the, how could I apply this to my life? What was the real tangible thing about that? And which is weird coming from an ENP such as myself, to be bothered by that. But I like to have something that has some kind of use, or something that I can at least objectively prove in some way or another. The what if I see in the future it getting better. And so that's what keeps me going with it. And so now with myself personal, as my little growth as coming into a person, after being subjected to being a witness for so long, I've learned more about myself. And some of my friends, like you mentioned, in the community, are seeing a lot about myself. And they're like, well, you're talking a lot like an ENFP. But I've always considered myself an ENTP. So now I'm kind of stuck in the middle, because now I'm even to the point where I think I even have an online personality, and on Facebook, I portray more of the affiliative person due to the fact that, I guess that's what everyone values in a community. Mm-hmm. If you watch me for my day-to-day life, I'm not like that at all. And for instance, if I indeed am an ENFP, I'm one of the most coldest ones you'll ever meet. And typically speaking, ENFPs are well in touch with their own moral principles and how they feel about things, and can answer those questions instead of what I would say is, I don't care. Which a form of nihilism, which is more prevalent to NTs. And so, but I'm open to the opportunity that possibly I could grow and become more of myself. And then you'll see that kind of thing like that. So I think that's kind of fun. And so I get what you're saying about the community and why you would join it. And then in that case, have you found any use of it in your life?
I think just kind of understanding, why my values and my husband's values clash a little bit, because he's SI hero, and and he has, he's very, very structured, and I'm kind of all over the place, and so just like understanding how, why that's there, and why he feels more need for that. Also, realizing my daughter is an ESFP, although I mean my SI inferior is not very patient. It can't take that much abuse, but yeah, just kind of understanding where she's coming from, and I'm still, trying to figure out a lot of applications, because even now, I wouldn't consider myself to be great at typing. Um, like I think about the colleagues I work with and stuff. It's hard to type people who are close to you, but you kind of realize there are, to an extent, there's some things that really aren't that person's fault. And yeah, I think you have, more of a grasp on how, and of course I think children might be easier to type because they're less developed, and we get kind of complex as adults. We develop more of our functions, and it all becomes more like pudding all mixed together, like Neapolitan ice cream that's melted, you know um and you can't tell what's chocolate and what's vanilla. And so yeah, I think it gets harder with
You're
adults.
right. And when you're dealing you're kind of constructing human beings into 8 functions. To me, it seems when you really start delving into the cognitive functions, there seems to be like these back doors. And so whenever you run into an issue, you have an excuse to get out of. And like you mentioned, you can't falsify it. And so it's like you can't really prove it wrong because there's always an excuse for something. And so it always connects. And it
Yeah,
always
you can
connects.
never. Yeah.
And this is the issue I'm running into, and I'm after leaving Jehovah's Witnesses, trying to find my way into a more of an objective life. But even then talking to you, who is actually a scientist, and you're like, well, that's not really that objective either. And when you break down as an ex Jehovah's Witness, trying to figure out that how I don't know how subjective life is in general. It really is. Coming from what was dogmatic, coming from what you had absolutes, you coming from what you had truths. And when you speak about things such as evolution, for instance, which we spoke about this beforehand, where you have obviously evidence of evolution happening. You obviously have evidence of fossil records. You have evidence of, of changes and genetics and different things like that. But then you have natural selection as essentially the best explanation now for it. And so that may change. And so then you might have something that changes that. And to an ex Jehovah's Witnesses, that's kind of scary. And so I don't know. It's just I don't know where I'm going with this, but I just think that's kind of funny to me. And when you're dealing with dogma and talking with you, give me a kind of a breath of fresh air. I don't have to be dogmatic with this. It's okay to be open about it, and I don't want to come to it, which is a huge weight lifted off my shoulders because I was coming from dogma into another dogma and still living in dogma. And now I'm like, well, that doesn't really matter. I'm still me.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so,
Well, Ben Yamin said something very insightful in one of his interviews. You are the authority on you. Like
yeah,
he's not there to tell you who you are. So I think people are really, crossing boundaries when they try to say, oh, you're this type. So this is your virtue and this is your vice. And this is what you'll never be good at. I mean, that person doesn't know. They're pulling it out of their ass. Okay.
yeah,
I mean, nah. And so I guess I feel really protective of like those who might be young and impressionable, and you know, things can become a self-fulfilling prophecy if you're told that, you know, before, you know, I noticed a click when I was 26 that, you know, I don't think my brain was fully developed before then. And I've heard this before that, you know, your brain's still developing in early adulthood. So, you know, I just don't know what hearing those types of things when you're that young and you're still, you know, your brain's still developing, how that would affect a person and what they're willing to pursue and the chances they're willing to take. I don't know. So I guess I like, I have a protective side. Like, I'm like, no, just stop talking now.
Yeah,
So,
and I
anyway,
get that. And
yeah.
because you mentioned, we were talking about the difference between FI of an ENFP and FI of an ESFP, and how the ESFPs in general are more confrontational on Facebook. They will throw it into your face. Let's have a group discussion about how I feel about this subject and this issue of morality. And I don't care about what it may happen, you know, because their lowest function is going to be NE. And while the ENFP is, while you may have strong feelings that you believe in and you want to share them with other people, you keep yourself shut down and you might keep it to yourself because NE tells you that this may happen or this is
Right.
probably going to
It's
happen.
somewhat of a filter. There's a, like,
Huge
yeah.
filter there. And so when I'm dealing with my conundrum right now of comparing myself with other FI parents, I'm nothing like an ESFP whatsoever. And I would never do that. I definitely have that filter as well. I don't want to start this kind of thing. And so, you know, and so that's where I'm kind of going. So I'm trying to like see where that is. And so this is what's so funny about it was, if you ask me personally, and if I was reading information, a version of an ENTP, and if you watch me in my day-to-day life, you would say, no, this guy's pragmatic, this guy's systematic. But I'm having people who I trust, you know, tell me, hey, you speak in moral judgments a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And this is my rationalization with this, which is really going to trigger Robert, which is so funny. But when it comes to being a Jehovah's Witness, so this is the ENTP here. See my terrible SE demon handwriting, and this is your ENFP. When you talk about TI and FI as a Jehovah's Witness, neither of these functions are useful
Right.
to a Jehovah's Witness because what's true is given to you. What's
Right.
moral is given to you. So you having an individual decision on what's true or an individual decision on what's moral is irrelevant because they're both given to you. And so both these functions would be, oh, I can't use the R word, arrested developed. Okay. And so there wouldn't be development there like
Yes.
there could be. And so that's going to be an issue. So whether or not I'm both either of them is irrelevant because I would not be developed, and just like anybody else would not be developed in those functions if you were in a high control group like Jehovah's Witnesses, for instance. You can add in LDS into this, or Westboro Baptist Church or something like that. It's one of those really extreme ones where your answers are given to you, and that's the kind of way it is. And so when I'm told I'm interest-based or I make FE judgments all the time like an FE critic, if you look at how Jehovah's Witnesses would use FE, it's all about henpecking. Okay, keeping people in line of what's right and wrong and informing others on what they should do and what they shouldn't do. So either way, SI and FE is going to be off the charts if you're a Jehovah's Witness.
Yeah.
Regardless of your type, regardless you're all 16, those two functions are going to be used. Because you have to, because SI is going to follow what's expected of you.
Right.
What's traditional, what's things like that. FE is going to inform others they're on the wrong path to destruction. If you don't change, you're going to die. Right. And you can even add in any in there could be a possibility for that as well, to be really highly developed as a Jehovah's Witness. NI isn't necessarily that important, because why would you need to design your own path? Why do you need to build something for yourself? Because you'll have the paradise one day to do that. And so that's what's kind of funny when we're talking about poking holes into different little things like that. And so you have the C.S. Joseph type grid, for instance, which is very simple to understand. It's very great for the very beginning, because you have 4 interaction styles, which are very clear to see. You and I are both starters, you can totally tell, and that's like blah, 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 blah. And they're very easy to find out. You can tell who are structured, you can tell who are finishers, you can tell who are background informative. That's very easy. I've always had issues with temperaments myself personally, because then you're boxing everybody in as NFs, NTs, SPs, and SJs, and each one of those 4 are very different from each other.
Right.
Very different. And so when I said the downfall of C.S. Joseph was the quadrant videos, when he was lumping everybody into even smaller groups in 16, because 16 is already too small to begin with. And now we're going to break it down into 4. Now we're going to break it down into 2, when you want to say NTJ, NFP, NTP, right. And then you're breaking it down like that, and you're really, really breaking down these little systems. It's kind of scary. And so with me, I've had a kind of little revelation right now where I feel kind of guilty in a way of being dogmatic with this. And even with my YouTube channel, kind of speaking with authority, which I should not have done, because humans are humans, especially in the fact that I've been typing other Jehovah's Witnesses who are just as screwed up as I am. And so,
oh, well.
And so that's what's kind of funny. And so I don't know. And so it's like I'm having like this now epiphany moment where it's okay to not know.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah.
I'm having like this personal growth where it's okay not to know, because 34 years of always knowing, and then coming out, and then I get to speak to people like you who are supposed to know everything in the eyes of most lay people. Like, oh, scientists, I trust science. I trust scientists, and like, oh, I believe in science, which is great. I believe in the scientific method too, as our best way of finding what's reasonably true. But even then, when you get up there, it's not, hey, this is an edict, this is dogma, this is what it is. That does not matter. And so that's kind of what I wanted to bring you on here, that even though you may want to say, hey, I want to pursue what's objective, I want to what is true, and I want to go in what's scientific, there's still room for other avenues. There's still other pathways. There's still other NEs to, like you mentioned, I know you're a person of faith yourself. Granted, I'm going through a huge issue there. And so even though you can't objectively prove your faith, right. you still believe in it. And that's fine. And that's great, and so even though I kind of identify now as more like an agnostic atheist, in between there, I still believe in a spirit world. I still believe in alternate dimensions. I still believe in possibilities of future things. I just can't prove any of them, so I have no reason to be dogmatic about it.
Right.
And so this is just part of my growth. And I'm hoping that other Jehovah's Witnesses that watch this realize that it's okay not to know. And when you leave, it's not so quickly you can just get over this kind of stuff, and you're going to see things in your life that you're going to want to join the Republican Party and be dogmatic about it, or you want to join the Democratic Party and be dogmatic about it, or you want to join whatever and just be dogmatic. And that's not necessary anymore. And we could, we can, not be so, what is it? Not divisive. What's the word? Polarizing, I guess.
Yeah.
Always trying to find the right word is really hard for me. Nothing ever seems correct. So I don't know. That's just my little system of things like that. Do you have anything to add to that?
I mean, let me think. I mean, yeah, that I agree with what you're saying. The gist of what you're saying, and and I like to think of science as being more of a process than like a set of facts, and like life is a process. our journey is a process. And so, I would hate to hear that I was the same person 7 years ago that I am today. Who wants that? So of course you're going to change, and you have to be open and allow for other people to change, and just,
Yeah,
yeah. So everything's a process.
correct. And let's be more abstract with that. And so let's say I'm going to use myself as a guinea pig for this whole video. I'm going to get open with people. Let's say the possibilities of to survive as a Jehovah's Witness was to be more ENTP like, more TI like, more FE like, and more into that, because like I mentioned, FE is going to be overpowered as a Jehovah's Witness, because remember, TI is about input. And so if TI is receiving bad input, it's going to process in bad ways. And then it's going to enforce it on other people with FE, bad input. And you're in all honesty, you're gonna think this is the caring way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so when people were talking to me about being affiliative or being abstract or being interest-based, I understand how my semantics or my verbiage or my words I use would sound that way when you're 34 years in, and everything is about that. It's all about being that collective. And what I hold to is the reason why I left wasn't because of the pedophilia issues. I didn't leave because of any kind of moral issues. I was not bothered by anything like that. None of those things bothered me. I didn't care, because what mattered was when I found out it was not true. What mattered was there was no reason to jump through all these hoops anymore if it didn't mean anything. And so it wasn't true anymore. And so when I was in, all of those issues, all those bad things, all became irrelevant because God would fix it eventually. And so this life did not matter. And one day you would be in a different afterlife, and everything would be fixed. Everything would be perfect. And so that's what I come along with when I speak to other NFs who have left. Their issues typically are moral issues. When I speak with SPs that have left, their issues typically are moral issues. When I speak to SJs that have left, their issues typically are the system failed them and their system is not right. And they usually leave this system and find another system to adhere to. And so then you'll see them joining, like I mentioned, Republican or Democratic Party, and then being real dogmatic with that, because then they find another system of affiliative. And then like either one, it can go either way. I'm not going to go the route of saying, oh, all SJs are authoritative, right, which is idiotic. And so that's kind of where I'm at with that. And so when you mention type plasticity of change, we'll use that term of, I hope I do turn out to be an ENFP. What a wonderful weight off my shoulder, because being an ENFP is like what's expected of you: to be a really nice person who cares about things, you have an ideology of bettering humanity, to be able to read minds and to find out how to care for people and how to figure out what's needed for everybody else. What a great life. What's expected from an ENTP? And what's the stereotype you get as an ENTP? Oh, as this belligerent asshole that argues all the damn time. He's always the person you got to go to tell you what's true or false. Someone who's got to be objective all the time and struggling with being nice while being true nonstop. ENTPs, you have what's your example of the ENTPs in there? You have Steve Jobs. Oh, you're supposed to be like Apple. You're supposed to be a billionaire. And so there's a lot more pressure to be an ENTP than being an ENFP, in my opinion, when it comes to humanity. And the idea of not understanding how you feel about things all the time, having no opinion about anything, and always being the devil's advocate, which this is how I view myself.
Right.
Isn't fun, because you feel like an alien, and so you're like
Y'all are a rarer type too.
so you don't relate with what you're in, so you're just like, like I try to explain in the abstract terms to like the ENTJ, who is part of the collective in a way because he has high SE as SE child. And so he understands the dynamic of what people are doing in their group dynamic. I don't have that. It was at the SE demon. But you
Okay.
can relate with that. And so you're just kind of like here. And to me, it's like, as an SI only user, really, because it's like you're the center of the world and everyone's looking in on you, but you're not part of them. And and so then you try to search for what you value if you so you can relate with people, but then you grasp and there's nothing there. And while you, on the other hand, have principles, you have morals, you stand by, you're responsible with them. You understand who you are as an individual. And so if there's a chance that that's going to happen to me and I can reach that point, I think that sounds a lot better than never knowing.
Yeah, because FI would, I guess,
So,
technically know. I mean,
so
I yeah, that's so different, you know, hearing that for an FI parent, because I'm like, I couldn't imagine not knowing, you know, my values or knowing who I am, or, you know, that's just so alien to me.
exactly. And so that's why when they say, hey, you got these interest aspects, you have these affiliative aspects. Well, yeah, I was in a cult for a long time. But if you look at my history, people have watched my videos. I got married to a man in an incredibly homophobic religion, you know, completely went against everything. You know, you could argue that could be your FI, but again, this goes into just the system's not there yet. And it's getting better. And I have been struggling with some stuff in the group because a lot of people are getting into sociology. I do not agree with the sociology in a lot of different ways. I'm sorry, socionics.
Oceanic.
Socionics, I apologize. Socionics in a lot of different ways. And, but there's other ways I do agree with it. And that's fine. And so I was thinking, like, if I'm going to pursue this more so, I should probably go through some kind of system that's more, you know, a better process of learning and actually coming to a more better conclusion than what I'm doing right now, reading random typology books and having random conversation with typology people, which is fun. But now it's reaching a point where I've reached a new threshold where you're beyond fun. And now you're using it in your everyday life. So if you're using it in your everyday life, it better be true, or at least somewhat true.
Right.
And so that's the predicament I'm in right now myself. And I mean, I don't know, I'm kind of like opening up like with you. And so it's like, you've been a lot of help for me in that sense. And so I hope that's a help for other people in that sense. And so, yeah, if you were a Jehovah's Witness or any person in that thing like that, and you're into typology, realize that your FI is going to be screwed up. Realize that your TI is going to be screwed up. Realize that your NI is going to be screwed up. Your SI should be overpowered just due to the fact that you're going to do what's expected of you in that sense. And you're going to do what's dutiful and things like that. Your FE is going to be overpowered because FE is the Karens in society, people. And so who are the Karens, ISFJs and INFJs? You know, they're FE parenting people. This is the way you have to be. Wear your mask. You're not being nice to other people. Come on, people, please, you know, and that's FE. And so if that is the ideal Jehovah's Witness, and you were indoctrinated to act that way at all times and always be on the lookout for somebody who's sinning, that FE is going to be overpowered. It's going to be overpowered. So whether I have an FE child on roids or FE critic on roids is irrelevant because 34 years I've been developing that system. And so a lot of people are like, wow, you're really concrete for an ENP. My SI is overpowered too.
I'm told I'm really concrete for an ENFP as well.
Yeah, probably from, you know, you had a great upbringing, your father, great experience with that. And, you know, obviously going through school, And even people like C.S. Joseph always said that ENFPs need to go to school and they need to learn that system and get through that kind of stuff. And so the fact that you've done that, and I've had conversations with you, like I follow other ENFPs in the scientific community who I'm a big fan of, and I'm glad that they're there shaking the boat, because the ESTJ, ISTJ professors are like, no, this is the way it's always been, and you need to respect tradition. And ENFPs don't respect tradition, not in the same way. We kind of suppress it. You know, the SI inferior suppresses it. And so, yeah, we have it there. Yeah, it's important. Yeah, we like to aspire with it. But typically speaking, it's in the back burner and you're not really paying attention to it too much. And so you're seeing the ENFPs of what we would call the academic quadra, you know, typically speaking, you know, the ones who
Which
are...
I didn't know was the academic quadra until
Yeah.
I got into typology. So that's
Yeah, people do
yeah.
this naturally. It's all typology, is observation of what's already happening. And so whether you follow socionics in a dating profile, you can look throughout humanity and find duals such as yourself. You can see duals. My sister's in a dual relationship. She's an INFP and her husband's an ESTJ. I see that. But then I see the golden pair scenario, probably more so because it's a little bit easier to do. There's a lot more ESFPs, a lot more ISFJs, so that's obviously going to happen. You have two.
Oh yeah,
The
yeah.
Homer Simpson, Marge Simpson, ESFP, ISFJ combination. Everybody loves Raymond, ISFJ, ESFP combination. You have Peter Griffin, ESFP, and Lois Griffin, ISFJ. You know, you have those things constantly in your face, but that doesn't mean that the dual thing's not there either. And so that's what I just wanted to get through was a kind of a breakthrough for me about, I'm going to be a lot less dogmatic when it comes to typology. I want to be more open to different things. And I think as I've discovered myself, I'm becoming a lot more happier with that. And before, you know, and I was just like meeting different people such as yourself. I'm currently with an ENTJ who also has a PhD, who also teaches me in different ways of educating yourself. Granted, his isn't law, and his is everything in law is subjective, in my opinion. And so it's pretty much whatever someone created, you know, and like, this is the best available fairness, the best available justice, you know, but does that make it always just?
No.
Not at all. And so with him, you know, he gets people off as a criminal defense lawyer who are clearly guilty, you know, but is that unjust to do that? I don't know.
According to our law, they have the right.
They have a right to an attorney.
So I mean, yeah, he's.
And so that's just the way it works. And so it's just interesting in life. And so Jehovah's Witnesses watching this, yeah, you're not going to find the dogma in real life. You ain't going to find it in science. You're not going to find it in law. You ain't going to find it. And if you do, you need to run away from it. So
Gosh, yeah, definitely.
If you find dogma, whether this be in typology, you need to get out of there, you know, and don't fall for that trap again. If someone's being dogmatic about science on any subject, you need to get away from that. If someone's being dogmatic about faith, you need to get away from that. If someone's being dogmatic about typology, you need to get away from that. And so unless there's anything else you want to point out, we can finish here if you want.
I'm good with that. Yeah, I think it's ended on it. We covered
I definitely want to put you on again because I don't know, I relate with you a lot in a lot of different ways. And then there's other ways that I don't relate with you at all. You know, like you just mentioned the FI thing. And I hope this will explain things. And when you were having a conversation with me before I got on camera, you're like, wow, that's very systematic. Wow, that's very systematic. Wow, that's very systematic. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's how I am in person. But then for some reason, I get on Facebook and I change. And that's more, I think, JW indoctrination I have to get over. And because obviously when I was at the Kingdom Hall, it was not who I was. When I was at home and I was with my little clique and my homies, you know, then I could kind of be myself a little bit more and things like that. And so, I don't know, personal growth is exciting. Typology is exciting. Science is exciting. Life is exciting. And knowing things for certain isn't exciting.
Yeah. Well, then where do you go with that,
You
right?
know, and so
Aw.
it's starting to make sense a lot, you know, what you hear and things like that. So anyways, we'll bring you back in here. We'll stop right here, and thank you so much for being on.
Okay, thanks, Matt.